Hey there, Tim and Dave with you once again from the Single Malt Review, and we have got something truly, truly special to take a look at today. This is, again, a loaner bottle, so thank you very much to the local whiskey enthusiast who loaned us this one.
Yes, you know who you are, we know who you are, and we are very grateful.
Because we surely would never, ever have been able to get our hands on one of these themselves. I don't even want to think about what the sort of grey market resale price on sealed ones of these are. It's a bad scene. But anyway, what have we got, Dave?
Well, Bob Ross, a painting legend, once said, I believe that there are no mistakes, only happy little accidents. And what we have here is one of the happiest little accidents out of Isla's Kilchoman distillery.
Yeah, this is the Gallically named Am Bùrach. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, which translates into the mess. And goodness, what a mess it was. Actually, why don't you pour, Dave? I've got the notes here just in case of emergency, because this one has a bit of a story to tell. This one was really quite a comedy of errors. Well, really only one extremely comical error coming together. Not since Kilchoman burned their still down has been burned their kiln down. Destroying their maltings, well, very, very early in their lifespan, really. I'm sure they've got that sorted out. Has there been such an interesting error at the distillery, or at least that we've heard about? So basically, the story behind this one is there was vatting taking place in the distillery, and presumably the levers were quite well marked, or maybe they weren't. Maybe someone was on their phone, maybe they were distracted, who knows? Maybe they were on the Pokemon that day, but the wrong lever was pulled, and suddenly, combined with the Mackie Bay, their standard, their house blend of largely bourbon with a little bit of sherry mature whiskey in there, in-tipped the entire allowance of port matured whiskey for that year. Well, for subsequent years later. It hadn't really begun to mature yet. It was only 3 years old, as with Mackie Bay. Oh dear. So what to do with this sort of Frankensteinian monstrosity of now bourbon, port, and sherry matured whiskey? They didn't even want to think about it. Back it goes into bourbon to think about what it's done while we deal with this warehouse operator and think up an appropriate punishment.
That secondary maturation lasted a full 6 years in those bourbon casks before we add another cask in the form of a ruby port finish for a good 6 months.
Finish for the whole lot. And 6 months, so a pretty short finish. But, as we've discovered time and again, port moves pretty jolly quick.
And Kilchoman done some amazing things with exclusively 100% port matured whiskey. Yeah. It's been sort of the rich colour on this. So this is a full 9 years.
It is, 9 years. More. So this is older than most Kilchoman for sure. I think we've tasted some, what we calculated to be 10-year-old Kilchoman, and that's by far the oldest we've seen. So this is older by a long shot. No, this is a cumulative 9 years old after all of the trials and tribulations that it's been through. Yeah. So we'll call this a roundabout port matured whiskey.
Yeah. Port, bourbon, a bit of sherry, and then bourbon wood. Yeah, and
still way more port matured than you'd normally get. Normally you'd get that finish, and that would be that. So what we've got here is probably going to be a really, really interesting beast, and you could almost smell it already. It's so, I mean, Kilchoman, that's just how it does for you, but this one, even beyond that, seems to be just an absolute beast of a whiskey. So I see Dave is just the tongue hanging out here. This is such a Dave whiskey. I will let you commence with the nosing.
I do just want to enjoy the colour too. It's somewhere in between copper, a amber ale.
We'll call that.
Yeah, it's got the port influence is big, but it's not overwhelming.
We'll call that the deep mahogany. I think
there's a hint of pink as well,
and it is 46%. So.
First up is lots of good, I repeat.
Kilchoman, unmistakably. And then that sweetness just starts to trickle on in.
Oh, there is some lemon from the bourbon cask influence.
I think there's a lot of lemon. There's a real zest on that before the sweetness really gets going.
Lemon curds. And there's some red currant from port.
Red currant, and that quickly is going into just sort of soaked sultana, rum and raisin creaminess,
juicy prune.
Once the port gets going, it takes a little while because it does its little citrus thing, and it does the peat first. But once that port kicks into gear, it is the port show from then on. And then milk chocolate, the absolute scientific sign of a port finish is that milk chocolate. Even some berry fruit in there. There's some raspberries just starting to ripen down here in New Zealand. We'll have raspberries next week if we're lucky. Oh, it's very, very promising. So let's try it at full strength here. Not huge at 46.
Okay, lots of very volcanic, rubbery peat up front. I'm going to have to get acclimatised to that and take another sip. Oh,
That's
but
beautifully weird.
There's a very fresh wood flavour on a finish after that. It's like someone has just splashed some clean spirit over some freshly hewn timber and bottled that smell and that flavour.
That's not quite what I was expecting. I think I see what makes this truly bizarre. I wonder if the normal port matured Kilchomans, I could be completely wrong on this, have a slightly lower peating level than your Mackie Bay output, because this is, you say volcanic, that's pretty right. This is a very, very peated whiskey.
But now that I've given my mouth time to warm to that and actually taste more of it, there are some amazing flavours happening there. There's raspberry and dark chocolate, bit of milk chocolate too. Some freeze-dried berries.
There's freshly roasted coffee as well.
Ooh. Yeah. A hint of espresso.
In spice, there is cinnamon and nutmeg, mace even. There is so much going on from so many different directions. It's a truly, truly nebulous whiskey, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare to actually describe. And I'm trying to think, does all the flavours work together? And I don't think they do, and I don't think they need to. It's a whiskey that's happening, and it's a party that's happening in about 3 different rooms of the house, and it's all good. It's disparate, but
someone's
it's good.
taken the contents of some luxurious brunch buffet with a coffee course and just tossed it all together onto one plate.
Yes, it's like a deconstructed whiskey that has been somehow reconstructed into one glass. I'm going to put some water in here, and that is going to make the fruit go bananas.
I can see why they were called the mess, but at the same time, it is one of the more beguiling, mouth-pleasing messes I've encountered.
Ooh, that has really riled up the soot too. Yeah, that Kilchoman sooty peat is never far away. That is so intrinsic.
Whoa, that's gone very.
That is so intrinsic.
Very
to the
maritime,
distillery,
very chlorinated after, and on the smell at least. Whoa, I'm going to let that breathe a little while.
Yeah, so that has really ignited the peat, but at the same time, it has freshened up the fruit. There is now just this torrent of red fruit rushing through this.
Yeah, I'm getting notes of stagnant seawater now of that very
bit
dirty,
of estuarine,
dirty
maybe.
old
mudflats,
brine that's
maybe.
been sitting there a while. Okay, I've got used to it now. I better try it with water.
Yeah, that's not completely different, but it is way more alive. I think it does benefit from that wee bit of water.
Yeah, it's lightened things a bit. The peat has got softer, despite that alarming brackish water aroma just then. The dark chocolate and coffee are largely gone. There's still some milk chocolate, some milky coffee left.
Yeah.
It's still some of those berry fruits.
There's almost
a bit of citrus.
There's a bit of strawberry milk now. A bit of the Nesquik.
Yeah, the raspberries have moved on a little and let the strawberries in.
This is a truly, truly weird whiskey. I can see why they gave it that 6-month extra finish, because I'll bet after all that time back in bourbon, the port might have been beginning to flag with the... Just though, not the fact that it was diluted, just the fact that Kilchoman peat is so strong, so punctual, that it might have just been covering the whole thing up. So that maturation, just that 6 months extra in the ruby port, which I'd have to look up my port stuff, but I think ruby port is a little fresher than tawny port, because the tawny barrels, the port's been in there for ages, sucking it up. So ruby, you don't get quite as much port flavour, but you probably get a bit more oak. And that, I think, has just sort of pushed it over the line, and that's probably why they only gave it 6 months, because they would have been checking in on this, having a wee dip every week or so, and watching its progress. God, what a job! I'm going to be talking about dream jobs. But
it's one of the most eclectic and eccentric Scotch whiskies I've ever tried. This is a true one-off. In a way, it's a shame we'll almost quite likely never see its like again. This is a result of an accident, probably a really serious, almost production line emergency when it happened, which led to a lot of a lot of anxious, sleepless nights, or people in charge of big sums of money.
Yeah.
But what it's turned into is a really quirky one-off. And since, Kilchoman caters to whiskey enthusiasts anyway, so people who want something a bit strange, a bit unique, and want something distinctly belonging to that one distillery, this would have, I'm sure, a great appeal.
Oh, and it does. Like I say, the resale on this one is a friggin' nightmare. But also, the fallout from this one, there went our next edition of the Kilchoman Port Matured. The last time we got a Port Matured was 2018, and that was an absolutely just a beltingly good dram, that one, as it always is.
I still have 100%
half a bottle
Port Matured too. The bottle's going down very slowly.
But possibly as a result of this particular accident, there goes the supply. We haven't had one since then, so we are still thirsting over here for a new Kilchoman fully port matured release, and I'm sure they've got one in the works. This may have just been a bit of a setback. Because this surely would have been destined to be the 2019, 2020, maybe even this year's one when it had come of age, but alas, cut down in its youth. But anyway, this one is going to be an absolute nightmare to score.
Yeah.
I've been struggling with this as I tread water for the last 30 seconds at least. It's a really, really good whiskey, but it is intrinsically confused and intrinsically confusing. So this is going to be a bit of a low confidence score. But just with the building blocks that it's working with, this is still easily a 90-point whiskey here. What do you think?
I'm on a very similar path. This one rates 89 from me.
Yeah.
It is right up there. It is complex. It is unique. It's full of bizarre juxtapositions of flavours and aromas, but still with a bunch of core Kilchoman characters underneath. It's just a real, I guess, I suppose an experimental art piece almost to compare it.
It's just a cracking old dram. It's a living whiskey. It's a whiskey you can really taste the life and times of how it got made, which I think is really special. And like I say, just a nightmare to score. Like some whiskeys will taste and it's like, okay, this is what this whiskey gets. This is an 84 right here in my mouth. It's easy, done. This one, the target's like, this. So I'm going to say this is a whiskey that's going to treat different people very, very differently if they have the pleasure of tasting it. And I think that makes it a really perfect one for sharing around as well, because I don't think there's two people on earth that are going to get exactly the same buzz out of this one. So
I think knowing the story helps too, knowing the genesis of this whiskey. Because if someone just handed this to me in a bar and said, try this whiskey, I'd think, okay, it's a peaty whiskey, it's some Islay peat, and a really weird bunch of flavours underneath I can't quite pin down. I don't know what to make of it. But knowing how it came about and what's in it means I can contextualise all that, I can taste it in light of its narrative, and that adds to the experience, I think.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. That is Kilchoman's Am Bùrach, assuming we're pronouncing that one correctly. Who knows? No one really does. And another, just a cracking one from Kilchoman, one of the distillery, one of the favourite distilleries over here at the Single Malt Review, you would have to say.
And a fine finish to this trifecta of whiskies loaned to us by our local viewer. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent stuff. So, it was good to taste the mistake, taste the disaster, the delicious... All right.
Ireland became the island of Dr. Oh no.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Turned it around.
All right. This one's getting iffy. So, Sludger, we will be right back.